All right, guys, let's talk about React State. That's arguably the most important workshop on the entire bootcamp, alongside components. Yeah? So state is the way React can handle dynamic applications. In other words, so far we've been talking about stateless components. Stateless component, like the main app component, yeah, that's the component you've been dealing with originally, is just a JavaScript function that returns a piece of HTML, JSX, right? Sort of HTML. And that works. But that's not enough in some scenarios. For instance, imagine that you want to interact with the application. Joshua showed me an example this week where he wanted to add a burger menu. So he wanted to interact, to click somewhere, and then of course the application had to react to that user event, right? So whenever we interact with the application, and also in other scenarios, whenever we communicate with an API in the backend, so this is task number 18, 19, yeah, so task number 18, 19, you'll start communicating with the backend. Yeah? So whenever we need to fetch data, interact with the application, in different scenarios, we need to introduce what we call state, yeah? And thanks to the state, our application will react. So there are different ways to deal with the state. I'm not going to show you the most sexy one, but the most fundamental one at least. It will be very weird if you master the new ways of dealing with the state, but you don't know how state originally worked, right? So I thought it was more important to start with the basics, or with the originals at least. All right, so look, I got my app.js, so far as usual, there is nothing on my app. So I'm going once again to delete everything. Yeah, so now, hopefully, if I save the file, I got nothing, yeah, empty page, fantastic. So my plan is, I'm going to create a new component. You already know how to create components, right? That was task number 7, I think. But I will create, first of all, a stateless component, and then we'll see the problem, and then we'll create a stateful component. So imagine that I want to have a component called Am I Sexy? Yeah. So that component essentially will have a button, and when you click on the button, it will tell you, yes, you are sexy. If you click again, it will tell you, no, you are not sexy, right? It will toggle A and B. So, function, am I sexy, return, div, and then button, and then am I sexy, so the button, yeah. So if we go back to the web browser, it's a bit small, but I hope you can see that, right? I have a button, but for now, nothing really happened when I click. So I want to display a message, like a label. And now that's the problem I want to present. How would you do that? That's a bit complicated, right? So how do I know if I already click on the button or not? A variable. Okay, let's see a variable. So let's create a variable called let sexy equals false, for instance, yeah? So by default, you are not sexy. So here you can set the ternary operator. So you can say if sexy, then yes, you are super sexy. Else, no, keep trying. I mean, the example is a bit stupid, right? But I hope you get the point. So look, by default it says no, you are not sexy at all. But now, it doesn't matter how many times I click, right? I cannot become any sexy at all. So how will you change that? All right, some people may be thinking we can add an on-click event. Yeah, so maybe you've seen that on the intermediate training already. On-click, so whenever I click on the button, then I want to call a function, right? So my function is going to be toggle sexy. Yep. So now, inside of the component, I can create another function, toggle sexy. Let's change it to true. So can I do that? Sexy equals true.
Sorry, Carlos.
Yeah.
Can you share the screen?
It's on YouTube, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So you get my point, right? Whenever I click, if I click on the button, sexy will become true. and that means that hopefully it will re-render, will change the message. Yeah? Is anyone lost already? No? Cool, fantastic. So let's see if that works or not. No, doesn't work. It doesn't work. Let's do something. From now on, please, every time you have a question about React, about conflicts, it's absolutely vital you have DevTools open. I'm not going to attend any request if you don't have DevTools open, because that's absolutely vital towards being able to debug problems. So this is a good example, right? As a developer, I would expect the message to change to yes, you're super sexy. It's not working. So what do you need to do next? Right-click, inspect. First of all, is there any error on the console? Let's have a look. Console, look, no errors. Because if there was any error, at least we can see if it doesn't work because of that error. But technically speaking, there are no errors. The console tab is empty. So the next thing we need to do is go to, let me zoom that a bit, go to sources. So let's talk about debugging. This is extremely important, guys. That's the way you can easily solve problems. So when you go to sources, you can open files. So what's the name of my file? It's app.js. So now we can open app.js. So how can we open a file? If you're a Windows user, you can search files with Control-P. If you're a Mac user, you can open files with Command-P. And now you can type the name of your file, app.js. The stream is not working? Codery.com/live or youtube.com/codery/live. It's working? Cool. Awesome. So, guys, can you see this is the source file, right? So, because that's the source file, I can interact with it. For instance, I can add breakpoints. Look, you see? I click on line number 12. That means if I refresh the page, hopefully, and this fails a lot, unfortunately, you see, that's something you should be warned. DevTools fail a lot. Yeah, that's inconvenient. But I'm letting you know because that may happen on a job interview. If you're on a job interview and you think it should stop on line number 12, but it's not stopping there at all, yeah, there may not be your problem. It may be Google Chrome problem. I'm trying to get rid of Google Chrome these days because of these problems. Yeah, I got the feeling like Safari got much better in that respect, but that's a separate story. So that was unexpected, but let's learn how to deal with the problem. So if you believe that your code should stop on a given line and it's not stopping at all, the first thing I will recommend you is close the tab and then go to incognito, okay, because sometimes there are problems with extensions and stuff like that. Go again to the website, open again the tools. So you start again, essentially, right? Sources, app.js. This is not my last bullet. That may not work, neither. But first of all, let's see if it works. Let's try to be a bit polite. Let's refresh. It still doesn't work. Yeah? Again, that may happen. That doesn't happen often, but I'm very happy it happened now. If none of these techniques work, there is a more aggressive way of forcing Chrome to stop on your line of code. Look, you can type that, debugger. That's a special keyword in JavaScript. If you type debugger, boom. Yeah? This is a bug in Google Chrome. But anyway, it's what it is, right? We need to deal with bugs sometimes. All right, so now, because Google Chrome realized that I may want to interact with breakpoints and stuff like that, I can hopefully safely add breakpoints, yeah? So if you see, I have this play button, that means go to the next breakpoint, pop, you see? And then here I can evaluate variables and everything. So for instance, what's the value of the sexy variable? False. Yeah? So this is a very powerful way to debug applications. Yeah? You will see, or you may be thinking about adding console.log messages. Don't do that. Don't do that. Never add a console log. That's the correct way of debugging your application. All right, so look, when I refresh the page, it renders. That's not a big surprise, to be honest, right? I click here, and that's it. So now the question is, do you think that if I click again on the I sexy button, it will stop again here? Will it re-render my component? Because if it re-renders, it may change the text. If it doesn't re-render, it will never change the text. So do you think it will stop here again or not? Yes? So first of all, will it stop on line number 9? Yes or no? Let's have a look. Not even. Yeah? So it's not even stopping on line number 9. All right, so let's evaluate why. If it doesn't stop on line number 9, that implies that obviously it's not going to change the value of is sexy, right? So once again, let's deal with the debugging problem. Let's add debugger here. And let's try again. Again, that's beyond the scope of the session, but I think it's important that you deal with these things because that may happen in a job interview. And even if it's not a job interview, you may want to debug your application, right? Boom, you see? Once I add the debugger tag, now it stops on the function. So definitely we are updating the sexy flag from false to true. That's good, that's fantastic. However, does that mean that is it going to re-render my component? Let's have a look. No. And that's not a bug of Google Chrome. That's the way it should work. Yeah? We got debugger. So it's not re-rendering. In other words, in React, you can create a variable, you can change the value of the variable, you can do whatever you want, but that doesn't imply that your component is going to react to the change. Yeah? React doesn't really know when and why it should re-render. Yeah? If we re-render, we update the message. But if we don't re-render, we cannot update anything. Our component is static. It got rendered only once, and that's it. This is why state is important. If instead of creating a weird random variable like that, we create a state variable, every time the state variable changes, React will re-render. And because it will re-render, it will update the user interface as much as necessary. That's the key for the success in life, right? So how do we create state variables? That's now the tricky part. That's not the tricky part. Even though in very modern React, you can easily do that without changing many lines of code, once again, I'm not going to show that today because it will be very weird if you learn the new way, but you don't know the fundamentals. So, historically speaking, to create a state, we cannot use a function. We need to completely rebuild our component. And this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to leave that piece of code here, just for reference purposes. Hopefully we can get rid of the debugger thingy. And I'm going to rebuild it completely from scratch, the sexy component, using a stateful component. And how do we do that? Typing class. Yeah? I'm sure you've seen that already, especially if you're watching the videos. Some of you have been asking, hey, why on the videos you create classes, however we create functions? Yeah? So classes are the historical way of creating stateful components. Yeah? I got a feeling that classes will sort of disappear at some point. But you'll get a job before that happens. That's why you need to learn that before, right? Cool. So how do we create a class? The syntax is a bit special, so I hope you understand it. First of all, the name of the class. So I'm going to use the same name, sexy. I will delete the other one in a minute. And now, we need to talk about where that class comes from. So look at the syntax. We need to type extends, and now React.components. So that's the way we essentially tell React, hey, This is a class. Classes are supported by JavaScript today, but that class is compatible with React. That's pretty much the message we say here. And now, we need to set up a list of callback functions. This is very important. The first one is, does anyone know how do we initialize a class in JavaScript, also in Java? The constructor, that's correct, Nico, constructor. So here, we'll do init stuff, whatever that means. Now we need something else to display stuff. What's the method to display stuff on a stateful component in React, guys? Render, fantastic. So you know that already. Cool. Render. Yeah? So now, as part of my render function, I will return the HTML, right? Let me just display for now a simply hello, how are you? Yeah, just for testing purposes. I want to make sure that works. All right, let me remove the am I sexy component. If you want to refer to it, you can watch the video later on. And now, let's see if it works, right? You see, so far, this is a very simplistic component. Actually, I can even get rid of the constructor. We don't even need it, yeah? So the most fundamental stateful component, render method, and then return a piece of HTML. All right, let's see if it works. Yeah, it works. Yeah. Hello, how are you? Cool. All right, so now, let's start talking about the state. The way we deal with the state is, as part of the constructor, we need to do, first of all, something a bit weird that I'm not going to explain now, but just do it. We need to call super. So super is a keyword in JavaScript that tells React, hey, I'm here. Please set up this component as much as necessary. Yeah. So for now, remember to drop it. And now let's talk about the state. That's the important part. So with the state, we can type that this.state equals, and then we set up an object. So this is our state. So here we can set up as many variables as we want. So whenever these variables change, the component will re-render, which is exactly what we are looking for. So this.state, sexy equals false. Yeah, you see that's an object. Yeah, objects, JavaScript, beginner, training. Yeah, that's an object. So now let's try to essentially display a message. So the message will be, does anyone know how to access that variable now in the render function? Correct, fantastic. This.state.sexy. Yeah? If this.state.sexy, then yes, you are sexy. Super sexy. Else, no. Keep trying. Yeah? Keep trying what? I don't know. So let's see if it works. Look, now the breakpoints are working suddenly. Yeah, you see, that's a bit random. But anyway, let's ignore the breakpoints for now. So where is my code? Let me refresh. No, keep trying. That's okay. That's good. That's good, right? Why? Because we initialize the sexy flag to false. If by default we assume that we are all beautiful people, yes, the message changes. But again, I cannot interact with my application yet. I can only set up a default state, and based on the default state, we'll render something. Let's talk about breakpoints, because it looks like now it's working because of whatever reason. Let's see if it works again. So assuming it works, which line do you think it will run? What's the execution order? I can zoom it a bit if that helps. Can anyone tell me the execution order of the breakpoints? 13 and then 9? So do you think the component will be rendered and then initialized? It's 9 and then 13. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't stop at any line, I will add another debugger line. So look. You see, it doesn't work neither. No problem at all. No problem at all. Don't panic, guys. Debugger here and debugger there. Excuse me. All right. It will stop now, I promise. You see? Now, yeah. So you see, it first initializes the component and then renders it. And that's it. Yeah? One and then the other. Easy. All right. So let's add some interactivity. Let's add a button. So with the button, toggle sexiness, if that makes any sense. Remember the on click. I will come here in a minute because that's more complicated now than it looks like. For now, let's create a function called toggle sexy. Can I do that? We'll see in a minute. That makes sense, right? So you have state object with a sexy property set to false. So when I click on the button, I want to change the property value to true. Right? I think that could make sense. All right, so now that's tricky. We've got a couple of oddities in this workshop. So if you want to call an on-click function, there are different ways to handle that. And it goes beyond the scope of this session because that will require an entire workshop to explain all the differences. For now, let me tell you something. If you try to do that, you ruin it. You ruin it. That won't work. Let's have a look. Let me get rid of the debuggers, by the way. That's the drawback, right? We need to keep maintaining them, which is not ideal. Thank you, Google Chrome. Cool, so let's start again. And look. So I'm going to press the button. And I would like to keep the console open. It's going to be a bit complicated, right? Because of the zoom in. But I hope you see, I got the console here. So if there is any error, any red text will show up at the bottom. Look. You got errors, clearly, many errors, and even the application already complained. Cannot read property state of undefined. Yeah? We'll talk about the reasoning behind on week number 8. That will be on the last week of the bootcamp, because this is about the way lexical this works, which is complicated. And this is one of the reasons why this type of class components are likely to disappear, like the dinosaurs, right? But again, that won't happen in the next 2 months. So for now, you need to deal with them. So for now, how do we deal with the problem? Whenever you want to have an on-click event, you need to do that. You need to create a function and then invoke it. You see the change? I'm not asking you to fully understand that change, but please do it. Yeah? If you come to me with that question, why it doesn't work, I'm not going to answer that question. I'll refer to this video. Yeah? You need to create like a fake function and then call your method. That's the way you can solve it for now. All right, so let's see if at least now we can essentially, if you get any errors or not. Let's see if we get any errors. Yeah, cool. So you see, it doesn't work, but no errors. Yeah, so at least we managed to solve something. So is our method going to be invoked? Is the toggle sexy method going to stop here? Once again, if it works, fantastic. If it doesn't work, I'll add the debugger tag. You see, it doesn't work. Once again, back to the code, debugger, and now we'll try again. All right, so actually, I'm a bit tired of doing these things. I'm going to Safari, guys. I cannot handle that. I've done that many times. So let me try with Safari. So with Safari, it's always good, guys, to experiment with different browsers, yeah? Because if you are only used to deal with Google Chrome, in a job interview, you may not have Google Chrome, right? So that's sort of resilience. So in Safari, which I don't really control a lot, to be honest with you, but it's pretty similar, to be honest. So in Safari, you got something called debugger. And when you go to debugger, then you can similarly Command P on Mac, Control P on Windows. You can open the file you want to deal with, app.js. And now let me get rid of the debugger. So this is a good experiment, guys. Let's see if Safari just works straight away without any weird debugger line. So app.javascript, and now you see it works, right? It works directly with Safari. So this is one of the reasons why I'm becoming less and less fan of Google Chrome browser. I'm using without stop since summer 2009 when it was originally released, right? Cool. So now you can see that I can, with Safari, I can sort of add breakpoints, right? So hopefully that will simplify the process a bit. All right. Cool. So once again, let me add a breakpoint on line number 13. Yeah. Okay. Let me zoom it a bit more. Yeah, like that. I hope you can see the screen, right? Cool. So I want to test if by clicking on the button, the toggle sexy function is executed or not. It is, which is great. That means I managed to bind a non-click event with a class function. But now the question is once again the same. Do you remember what I asked you before? Will it force a re-render? Let's have a look. No. It's not stopping on line number 17. If I refresh the page, it stops because we render the component once. But when I want to interact, when I want to update my user interface because of a user event, it calls the toggle sexy function, fine, but it doesn't re-render. Why? Because even though from a JavaScript point of view, that's the natural way of updating objects, that's not really the way React works. We cannot update the state like that. In other words, if we do it, fine, but React is not going to take any action. And we really want React to take an action. The action is, please re-render my sexy component. So how do we tell React, please re-render my sexy component? We need to change that line a bit. We need to call this dot set state. That's the way React will take an action. And this dot set state is a method. So we need to call it with parentheses. And what do we pass inside of the parentheses? We pass an object. We pass an object with all the properties that we want to change. So can anyone tell me what should I type here? Sexy. What else? Colon, because correct? True. Correct. Fantastic. That's the way we tell React, please update my state and re-render. The entire point of the state is a state will hold all the information that is going to be dynamic in your user interface. So whenever the information changes, the user interface changes. I think that's pretty natural, right? Cool. So let's try again. Let's try again. I'm going to add a breakpoint. It looks like Safari is pretty stable in that respect, so I'm very happy about that. So let me finish. If it's running, sometimes it's better to complete the execution and then we start again. All right, so let's try again, guys. I have a breakpoint on line number 14. I have a breakpoint on line number 18. So first of all, as soon as I refresh, it will stop here because it will render, right? Let's have a look. Sorry, that's the thing, right? If you change the code, you need to add the breakpoints again. So that's a bit tricky to handle. But anyway, let's try again. It takes a while sometimes. Now Safari is trying to do something, right? Hello, Safari. I'm here. Why don't you like me? Here you go, right? It's back. I mean, again, you can see that breakpoints are still unreliable, but still very important, guys. So that happens also sometimes. So you see, instead of opening app.js, I got a weird file here. So if that happens, app.js again, and then make sure the breakpoints are in place. Again, this is sometimes a pain in the ass, but that's still by far, by distance, the best way of debugging your application. So, once again, let me refresh. Cool, now it works as expected, right? So it's trying to render once, and that's it. So now the question is, I'm going to click on the button. Will it stop on line number 14? Yes or no? No, why not? I render something already. I render my component. I want to click on the button. So do you think if I click on the button, it will stop on line number 14? Yes or no? Correct. This is what we've seen before. And now, that's the important question. By calling setState, will it re-render? Will it stop on line number 18? So will it stop? Yes or no? Let's have a look. You see the difference, right? Because we call setState, now React understands that we want to paint the screen again because something has changed. Because something has changed, let's have a look to the value of sexy. If I hover the sexy variable, will it display true or false? And that means, yeah, so we managed to close the loop, to complete the circle. Let's do it again without any stopping, yeah? See, pop, as soon as I click on the button, pop, the user interface updates. That's the way it works. Can anyone tell me what happened? Because at the moment, to me, the semantics are wrong. So if I have a method called toggle, you know a toggle. Toggle is like a switch, right? Like the light, on and off, on and off, on and off. This is not a toggle, right? It goes from false to true, but it never goes back to false. Imagine that you are creating a nuke, an atomic bomb, right? You can enable it, but you cannot disable it. That's a bit dangerous, right? From a human perspective. All right, without going to that corner case, can anyone tell me how do we revert that? How can we make it true and then false and then true and then false? Exclamation mark. Like that? No. Say it again, Gideon. This dot state dot sexy. Correct. You see? That's a common problem when you deal with React stateful components. I've seen that with some of you, task number 13, 14. Some people is doing that and said, hey, why this doesn't work? Because sexy is not a variable here in this context. The variable is this dot state dot sexy. Yeah? So let's see if it works. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, it works. So that's the way you deal with the state in React. Sorry about that. So, is there any questions? No? Can we, that's pretty much it, to be honest, right? That's the way state works. Let's do something. You know task number 13, some of you have been working on that. There is no user interaction. So there is like a default message, and after 3 seconds, we update the message. Let's do that. Let's do that. So instead of playing with the button, let's get rid of the button, guys. And now let's have a default message. So the default message is, you are not sexy, right? That's the default message. So now we just display the message, whatever the message is. So let's get rid of the ternary. So that's even a more simplistic scenario, yeah? Let's just display a message. So let's get rid of the break lines because we don't need them anymore. This message. So we don't even need a toggle sexy. So you see now, this is much simpler, right? You are not sexy, static, right? There is no user interaction. So now, after 2 seconds, I want to update the message. There is no interaction from the user, right? There is just timing-based condition. How can we do that? Well, first, say it again? Correct. That's super important, guys. So on the constructor, we initialized our component state. So what's the default state? You are not sexy. Whatever happens next, if it's a time-based condition, imagine that, and you will see that, you will do requests to the backend, starting on task number 18, 19. Yeah? So this has nothing to do with user interaction, it's time-based. You go to the backend, and maybe after 2-3 seconds, imagine that you are on the Jubilee line with very poor internet connectivity, it will take a while to fetch the TV shows from the backend, right? It's a time-based condition. So whenever you got that, there is another callback. Component, did, mount, super important, guys. So in here, we can change the state. We can change the state. So how can we delay, how can we set the condition after 3 seconds, for instance? Set interval, wrong. What's the difference between set timeout and set interval?
Set timeout will display after like a couple of seconds or whatever you use.
Yeah.
Set interval, it pops up.
Correct. Correct. Set timeout happen once. After 3 seconds, do that. That's it. Set interval will happen every interval. Yeah. You know this trading apps that gives you in real time the exchange sterling euro in real time. So the old ones were reading with set interval. Every second, give me the exchange. Every second, give me the exchange. Yeah. Today there are better ways to do that, but that's set interval. So with set timeout, that's the syntax, right? We can pass the timing. So after 3 seconds, now you tell me, how can I, after 3 seconds, say that yes, you are sexy? This state? Aha, set state, right? Remember what we explained. If you do this dot state, it will never re-render. Yeah, that's very important. This dot set state. And now, what? Message? Like that? No? Object, fantastic. Message? Yes, you are, right? So, how does it look like? Refresh, you are not sexy, you have a Jaeger bomb, and then, yes, you are, right? Everything looks better, like that. Cool, you get the point, right? Again, refresh, 1, 2, 3, pop. All right, so, constructor and component in mount. The very last question for this session, very important, guys. You will never get a job unless you understand that. I'm going to add some breakpoints. Look, line number 8, line number 13, line number 14, and line number 19. That's a bit weird because Safari, how can I get rid of this delete breakpoint? All right, let me delete the grayed out breakpoints just for readability purposes, right? Yeah, yeah, go for it. So on component in mount, we run actions that may take a while to complete. This example is a bit silly, but it may happen, right? Imagine that you're building an app and you want to display, and the winner is, and after 3 seconds you display the name of the winner, right? So in some scenarios, you don't want to take an action immediately. You want to wait for something. And even if you don't want to wait, in some cases you are forced to wait. If you call the backend, you need to wait. Yeah? If you search something on Google, you need to wait until Google brings you back the results. It may be a matter of milliseconds, but it may be a matter of seconds. That happened many times. If you are doing React training, when you submit an exercise, it takes a few seconds, right? So this is why we need component in mount. Whenever we trigger an action, and it takes a while to complete. Yeah? So on the constructor, we set up the initial state. Everything happening after that initial state needs to run here in the component with mount.
And why, so the previous example,
Yep.
why do you use the calculation?
Okay, because of the previous example, we had a user interaction. We click on a button. Yeah? So one thing is, if we have a user interaction, we need to create a method to capture the user interaction. In this particular case, what's the user interaction? Do I need to click anywhere? No. I need to wait. Yeah? So a component in mount works when there is no user interaction, when there is just a wait condition. Could be displaying a message after a few seconds, could be going to the backend, could be whatever. I mean, you'll see that on task number 18. Yeah? So maybe I'm thinking a bit ahead. But it's important for now, at least it starts something familiar, component in mount.
Just a quick question about breakpoint.
Yep.
Is it breaking at the start of the line or at the end of the line?
Ah, that's a fantastic question, Sarah. It stops before the line runs, at the beginning of the line. Yeah? So the line has not been executed yet.
Yeah, that's why I was getting confused.
All right, so look, I have a breakpoint on line number 8, I have a breakpoint on line number 13, I have a breakpoint on line number 14, and I have a breakpoint on line number 19. So, the question is, I want you to tell me the execution order, the numbers. Who wants to go first? Yes, I will only refresh the page, and then the debugger will stop sequentially on all the breakpoints. So what's the execution order? Who wants to go first? So is it Max? Max said 8. No, wait, one after the other.
Well, okay, 8, 19, then 13, and then finally 14.
All right. Who else?
Yeah, I think
Nico?
8,
8.
then 19,
Yeah.
then 14,
Yeah.
then 13.
Right. Who else? So Mountain. Is M or N? M? 8, 19, 13. All right. Who else? No one else? So if no one else means you agree with any of the guys? I mean, if you agree with Max, Nico, or Mountain, yes.
Yeah.
So Sarah, you agree with who?
With Max.
Can I change mine?
No, you cannot change yours. No. So coding is about thinking before saying your thoughts, guys. So you're not allowed to change your mind. Anyone else that hasn't participated? So you agree with Max as well? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Yoni.
No, I'm the same.
You agree with who? Okay.
I agree with Max as well.
Okay. Cool. Right. If it any helps, no one got the job, right? Because you all fail. So you still, if anyone hasn't participated, you still have the chance.
Is 19 and
No, too late.
Okay, sorry.
Anyone who hasn't participated? Mountain, you already participated. So Joshua, Lisa, Clarissa. So, no, not yet. So if that's your answer, that means you understood nothing on the last 45 minutes, right? Yeah, because that's not the way it works. The thing is, if you were right, if that solution were right, the component will never re-render. Because according to your criteria, line number 19 is running only once. If it runs only once, it doesn't re-render. So what's wrong? Can anyone tell me what's wrong in this solution? Runs again what? That's correct. Now, this is completely correct. Yeah? So, first of all, it runs the constructor. Fine. Then you said something very interesting, and I thought that you were going to fail here, but you made it right. The component did mount runs after the first render. That's why it's called component did mount in the past. Yeah, the component is already visible whenever we stop on line number 13. So once again, we stop on the constructor, line number 8, then we render by the first time, line number 19, then immediately we go to component did mount, line number 13, and after 3 seconds, we stop on line number 14. Because we are updating the state, we are telling React, that's the entire point of having a state, hey, I have a new message for the user, so please paint the screen again. In other words, run the render method again. Does it make sense? Do you want to run it to see if I'm right or I'm talking bullshit? All right, so let's refresh. Line number 8, fantastic. Yeah, you see, line number 8. And now, if I run it again, line number 19, thank you, Safari. And if I run it again, it will go to line number 13. Here you go. And if I run it again, after 3 very long seconds, look, 1, 2, 2.5, and 3. Yeah, we stop here, and then immediately, boom, 19. Yeah, and that's it. And then you are very sexy. Yeah. Does it make sense? So, once again, from now on, every time you have a problem with Codeflix, I'm not going to attend any request unless you open the debugger, you add some breakpoints, and you really deal with the problem. That's the first line of defense. That's the first line of defense. If after adding all these things, you don't know what's happened, then I'm here to help, right? But you cannot get help doing that. I don't know why I click on the button, but it doesn't work, right? And that applies obviously to your daily work and to a job interview. Yeah, if you are asked to do a pair programming exercise, they are not going to ask you, please open DevTools. You'll sit with a senior guy, and before doing any line of code, the first thing you will do is, okay, I need to deal with this app. Let me open DevTools because I want to see what's going on. That causes a very good impression. Yeah, you can't imagine how many senior or theoretical senior developers they try to solve problems without DevTools. Looks very weird. Looks very weird. Anything else, guys? No? Cool. So that was it. Thank you for watching.